As we continue to discuss ASL semantics, it's worth taking a look particularly at the issue of space to see how rich space is in its ASL usage. First of all, let's think about surrogacy. Remember, surrogacy is a broad concept that could use either direct dialogue, when you're quoting people in role shifting, and constructed action, showing what something looked like, particularly when you're doing expansion techniques such as describe then do. Surrogacy is really the use of space. It's acting out as if you were really there. So you don't just simply say that a person looked drunk after drinking 5 beers. They looked like they were drunk. You also show, which is a use of a what we used to call classifier, now call a depicting verb, as well as the use of the whole body, which is called constructed action or surrogacy. Space is also used in order to refer back to people and places, and this is called the concept of token space. It's when this particular space on my right or my left or in front of me or above me or whatever refers to something that's not really there, right? So if I say that I use the preposition, which we discussed there, which is used sort of like the word at school, at work, at the mall. The mall isn't really over to my right, over to my left. I mean, it may be, but it's not important whether it's actually there. I'm referring to it as if it were. Similarly, when we use determiners like the boy or the car, we're referring to objects as if they were there, and then we can refer back repeatedly. We also see this in our verbs. We see it in our depicting verbs, where we use what we call classifiers to show something is there. So if you say the car is there, then I can point to the car. The car drives by, and I can point to the car over there now. We use locative verbs to refer to space. So I fly to that area, and whatever I set up over there is where I fly to. And we use agreeing verbs or indicating verbs to refer to people. If I know that if I've set Bob up over there, then that means I give to Bob. This means he tells me something, etc. So token space is very important in ASL because we use the space around us as if it referred to real space, as if the person really were there or the car really were there, though they are not. Now, it's important to see that this is sort of a metaphor in the way that we use space. Sometimes there is real space. If Bob is standing right there and I tell him, well, then I am not using a token space or metaphorical space. Bob's really there. But we use it in ASL often token space as a way of referring to people that are not present, but also lots of metaphors that we just assume the listener understands. So I might discuss a trip that I'm planning, and I might talk about Tennessee and Nebraska and Washington, D.C., and I'm pointing in these areas. The person I'm talking to is going to understand that I have a map in my mind. Or if I talk about use this sign, which represents a person, right? It's a depicting verb to represent a person moving down a list while I'm talking about, I don't know, topics in a classroom, then it's understood that I'm speaking as if we had an actual list of things to do, and I'm moving down that list, or I may use my hand to do that as well. There's no real list. It's a metaphor. We're speaking as if there were a list. There's no real map in front of me. I'm speaking as if there were. You'll see this with diagrams, with visualizations of what things would look like, with relationships between people. You'll see suddenly people talking about their family tree, and they'll talk about their grandfather and grandmother, and they got married, and you'll see them working out a family tree as if there really were one in front of them. This is called metaphorical use of space. It's an extension of token space because we're talking about things that are not there, but we're assuming that the person we're talking to understands whatever this metaphor is that we're using. Sometimes we say it explicitly, but most of the time we don't. We just start using it, and we start referring to these pictures in our head, and the people that we're talking to are familiar with these same metaphors, and so they know, oh, he's speaking as if there were a map, or as if there were a list, or as if there were a diagram, etc.